Campbell. And I'm Ron Benson. Cerebral Conversations on Disability Liberation and Integration.
Hello everybody, CJ Campbell here. I'm actually sitting in the cathedral for the University of Pittsburgh. This week is a bit of a different episode because I've been spending the week with my girlfriend here in Pittsburgh. And so I've had a really good time. We went to a Renaissance fair. We ate some permanis. It's been a really great time. And we're taking a bit of a break from our series on health and wellness. I actually interviewed my girlfriend's grandma, a woman by the name of Rose King, who was an advocate and an activist for those with disabilities and helping them integrate into the school system here in Pittsburgh. So it's a really cool conversation, and she kind of lays the groundwork here at Cerebral Conversations, which is conversations on disability liberation and integration. As you can see, my co-host Ron is not here, and he's very much missed, but he'll be back next week. It'll be more of a normal show. So I hope you guys really enjoy this interview, because I really enjoyed it. I'll see you guys in a little bit.
Okay, so we are here in the lovely home of Mrs. Rose King, who will be our interview for this week on episode 17 of Cerebral Conversations. Say hello to everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Mrs. King, how did you get involved in the disability movement?
I have a daughter who has Down syndrome. And when she started school, I started to see a lot of things going on that I wasn't happy with and that I didn't think were appropriate for her. And so I don't know what happened, how I got so lucky to be trained by the state of Pennsylvania on the education laws.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about 3 or 4 days of training, and I learned the federal laws, the state laws, and I immediately saw what was and wasn't going on in the school district. And it didn't take me long to figure out that the bottom line of not providing appropriate education for students was money. And that was the one thing that the school districts were not allowed to use as an excuse for not providing appropriate educations. And then the big thing was that each child is different, and their education should be appropriate to their needs. And the school districts thought that cost too much money to do that, so they tried to lump them all together and just save money at their expense. So I decided to start a parent-teacher support group in the school district. And I immediately was considered leading an adversarial group. Teachers were invited, but they weren't allowed to come. By administration, they weren't allowed to come.
Wow.
But they knew that we were there for them. And whenever laws were violated, to the number of students per teacher, and we approached administration about it, they always, blew us off. So we had this power called due process, that all special needs students have the power. Their parents, of course. And so I would sign due process every year for the years that she was in school. Sometimes I signed due process twice because an aid was not provided to the teachers when the number of students exceeded what was allowed by law. The support group, I tried to educate the parents. They were afraid of rocking the boat. There would be repercussions on their children. They didn't know the federal and state laws that protected their kids, and they were afraid. And I'm sorry to say, I had to force a lot of them to sign due processes when I thought it was necessary. And the teachers loved us because as soon as we found out that there was a violation in their classroom, we did something about it. So I did that for as many years as Jen was at school.
Awesome. So, what time period was this all occurring in?
You mean a year time or number of years or?
Like, was it in what decades?
I would say around 1983.
So, this was before the Americans with Disability Act was really put into place in 1990. So, you obviously were kind of forefronting a lot of things that hadn't been addressed.
Probably. The Pennsylvania had the first right to education laws for children.
Mm-hmm.
And the federal government then wanted to do something because they were embarrassed that they weren't doing anything. Of course, they didn't know what to do or how to do it, so they used the state of Pennsylvania's laws as a guide for their laws. And so suddenly we not only had state coverage, we had federal government coverage. However, if the federal government said one thing and the state said something else, the state overruled the federal government. Mm-hmm. And so we were able to we weren't out to make trouble. We were out to get appropriate educations for each and every child. We couldn't make them understand, administration, that a well-educated special needs person could be a taxpayer rather than a drain on the tax system. And they just fluffed that aside. They didn't want to deal with that. But I feel that we were able to help a lot of parents to get a lot of kids the appropriate education that they needed to let them lead a productive life for themselves as much as they could. With the right education, they could do it, and they are. A lot of them are.
Now, when you were first starting out, I'm sure that you ran into obstacles of trying to explain why is this important, why should we do this? What was your response when you would run into roadblocks of just ignorance or apathy to brothers and sisters with disabilities?
The law.
The law?
The law was there. The law was written. The law was there to protect the rights of special needs students to an appropriate, that was the key word, always appropriate. Not what was available, not what the school had available. What was appropriate. If something was appropriate for a student that the school district didn't provide, they had to provide it. And this was the big fight all the time. Money, money, money. But we did what we could, and a lot of teachers were very grateful, very helpful, although they couldn't come out and openly support the group because they were afraid. Even the head of special education in our school district told me one time, if it were my child, I'd be doing the same thing. And I knew that. But he was trying to do his job, and it wasn't to help me at all. So we agreed to disagree, and we understood each other. And so I feel today that my daughter reads, writes, does everything that the professionals said she would never do.
Yeah, she's pretty amazing. I'm a big fan already.
She, when she was mainstreamed, she learned how to cut classes. It was great. she cut classes. She wanted designer jeans. She wanted the expensive tennis shoes, everything else that she saw. And the hardest part when she was mainstreamed was getting the principals and other administrators to treat her like any other kid.
Mm-hmm.
Give her detention when necessary. I had to force them to give her detention one time because she kept cutting classes. And so they said, okay, we'll give her detention, but you'll have to pick her up after school because she'll miss the bus. I said, that's fine. I'll be there. But she won't know I'm there. I was hiding. And she was sitting in detention doing her thing. Excuse me. And all of a sudden, the secretary said, okay, class detention is over. You know, you can leave now. And she jumped up. I'll never, ever cut class again. I'll never, ever do that again. So the principal comes out, you know, beaming with a big smile. And I said, Ed, do you really believe that she's never going to try that again? I said, because she will. She's going to do it again. But you have to treat her like you would any other kid.
Absolutely.
Give her detention.
Part of the show is centered on this idea of disability liberation, which is kind of breaking off the chains and the stigmas of understanding of disabilities, whether they be physical, cognitive, or mental in any way. But also the other part of that is integration, because I think to really truly be liberated from those things, brothers and sisters with disabilities need to be a part of our communities and have the same opportunities.
Yes, it was because she was mainstreamed. She could be in so many different places, and she was recognized by name. Hi, Jen. How? Otherwise, you know, she wouldn't have been. And when she was up in the high school, of course, she's only like 4 foot something. They used to sneak her to the front of the line in the cafeteria, and you know, all that. She used to get away with everything. But I knew that mainstreaming meant learning the bad points as well as the good points.
Yeah, I think that that's a common misconception is that when people with disabilities ask for their rights to be recognized, that somehow we're asking for special treatment.
Right.
And we're not. We're asking for just a way in which to function and live in a world that we are created to live in,
Yes.
but that it hasn't been built for us to live in. So one of the things that I always talk to people about when talking about disability is that the definition of disability shouldn't be based on the lack of ability. It should be based around the lack of facilitation to work with what abilities we have.
Agreed.
Thank you. So, as far as with the work and all the progress you've seen for a parent or a school administrator of any sort, or just someone who wants to work and advocate and build off of the foundation that you've helped to establish, what advice would you give them?
Learn the law.
Learn the law.
As soon as I knew what the laws were, then I knew what her rights were. And I knew when her rights were being violated because I knew the law. And I tried to teach parents these laws we would meet once a month. And I tried to teach them, your child is in a class where there should be an aide and there's no aide and he needs help. And you have to do the due process thing to get, and then be afraid that there would be repercussions if they did this. Everybody didn't learn. A lot of people did, but not everybody did. So, you know, that was, and I think one of the saddest injustices that were done to regular ed students was that when special ed students were mainstreamed into their classes, they didn't know anything about these kids. Nothing. So at one point, the health teacher contacted me and she said, Mrs. King, would you be willing to, on that part of the lessons about exceptionalities, would you be willing to come in and talk to my class? I said, sure. about your daughter, because she was in the building with them, but they didn't know anything about her. And they were very honest. And I said, you can ask me anything you want. And they did. And like, if I touch her, am I going to get what she had? This kind of stuff. And, I had to tell them the truth. And she wants to be recognized, and she wants to have friends, and she wants to be your friend. One little girl started to ask me a question, and the teacher kind of stopped her. And she says, I said, let her ask it, because I said she could ask anything she wants. And she wanted to know if I had known while I was pregnant with her that she would be special, would I still have had her? And I said, we're being honest. I said, I don't know. Back then, I don't know what I would have done. Right now, I can tell you she's the best part of my life.
She's pretty awesome, I gotta admit.
She's great.
She's gonna teach me how to scrapbook properly.
She's very independent. She's very resilient and determined.
So, as one last question, with all the progress that you've seen over the years, and watching from going to almost no help to there's programs, there's laws, there's education, what do you hope to see in the future for people with disabilities in regards to their rights, especially in schools and in the education process?
Education is, without a doubt, so much more important to them because of how differently they need to be taught. And if the school districts, if the teachers aren't following their plan of education, then they're not going to learn. And they're not going to have much of a chance out in the real world. Nobody cares out in the real world. That's another thing. Nobody cares what your grade was, how many A's you had. But if you can get along with the person next to you and behind you and around you that you work with, then you can work anywhere. And if you're exposed to special needs people, and special needs people are exposed to regular ed people, they'll get along. And that will help them to be productive and independent and have a job. The fact that they can get along with other people. I think that's important.
Awesome. So I guess your hope is just to see a continuation of people being mainstreamed.
Yeah, not just dumped
Absolutely.
into classes. The mainstream has to go with the needs of the individual. And if that happens, these students can be so much more independent in their life. I keep remembering graduation day. Jen in her cap and gown, she was able to stay. Special ed kids are able to stay till they're 21. But she was able to graduate with her class. And on graduation day, when she was walking in line with all them, and they called her name, and her arms went up in the air, and the whole auditorium hollered for her. It was a great feeling.
That's awesome.
Everybody knew who she was, and she was so proud to be a part of that graduation class. At one point, there was a time when they didn't think it was necessary for special needs to graduate with their classes. We had to fight for that too, but we got it.
Of course you did.
We got it.
Well, I would like to personally thank you for all your hard work and kind of building a foundation where I think if it weren't for people like you, us doing this show wouldn't happen. There wouldn't even be an understanding of a need for it or an interest in it. So I wanted to personally thank you for...
Oh, you're very welcome, and thank you for talking to me.
Absolutely.
I love talking about my
Absolutely. So I would say that if there's any parents out there of special needs students, whether that be a cognitive or a physical disability, know what you can learn from this is that there are laws to protect you. Also, there are support groups, and support is crucial, especially in the early years where you can glean and learn from people that have been through what you're about to go through. So with that, we'll end this interview, and thank you so much again, Mrs. King.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I hope you guys really enjoyed that conversation with Mrs. Rose King. With that, we will wrap up episode 18 of Cerebral Conversations, conversations on disability liberation and integration. Remember that you can email us your stories, feedback, and questions at cerebralconversations@gmail.com. You can also check out our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/cerebralconversations. And we're also on Twitter, which is @cerebralcombos. So until then, I really hope you enjoy this, and it was fun being on the road. But I can't wait to get back to Ron. So until then, until next week, keep it cerebral.